Hello, hello. Matt Franceschini here, and today I wanted to do a little bit different of a video and talk about something all of us guitarists probably know a lot about and have probably spent far too much money on and have too much of, and that is gear. I'm very fortunate that I have many nice, expensive guitars, I have a wonderful amplifier, and a bunch of stuff that I don't actually use that much in terms of making my living, but I have, and it's nice to have, and we all deserve a couple nice things, you know. But I wanted to talk about a purchase I made about 2 years ago, and I got it secondhand, and it cost me about $800, and it has become probably my most frequently used piece of gear. The piece of gear that I am talking about is this wonderful Line 6 device, the HX Stomp. So for those of you who don't know, the HX Stomp is a digital modeler. It's all of the power of a Helix shrunken into a tiny little form factor. And that's one of the reasons that this is such a go-to device for me, is that it fits in the front pocket of my gig bag, which is awesome. And there's kind of three main areas I'd like to talk about with it. So first, we'll talk about why I actually purchased this in the first place, which is, as a guitarist, I've always had a love-hate relationship with pedals and effects. I, of course, love them, but they're very expensive. You have to put them on a pedal board, and it's an extra thing to carry around and keep track of. And if I ever wanted a particular sound, I'd have to buy a $200 to $500 pedal and put it on my board, and if I wanted to have certain combinations, I might have to move something. And so what initially inspired me to make this purchase was the fact that the HX Stomp can model so many famous and wonderful sounding effects. And so when I initially used it, and my preset title is titled Main, I don't know how well this will show up on the camera, but that was my main purpose, was I sold all of my pedals, I sold my pedal board, and I bought the wonderful HX Stomp. And so on it, I run the main effects that I use, which are distortion. I've got a tape delay. I've got a poly sustain, which is similar to the Line 6, or not Line 6, sorry, to the Electro Harmonix freeze pedal. I have a chorus, and I have a big, dramatic, dynamic hall reverb. And so that I would normally run right into my amp, which I use a Mambo Wedge 10. And I was using this mainly as an effects processor so that I could throw this in my guitar case and I could use it. Really, in terms of effects, I don't use much. Sometimes I use delay and reverb to get a nice fat sound, and I do use the freeze pedal quite a bit because I play a lot of trio and I want to kind of mimic a piano and get a fuller sound. But I originally got it, I sold all my effects and did it for that, and it's truly wonderful. It has been game-changing in that regard, where I no longer have to buy expensive effects. People will argue that the modeling on this isn't as good as the real pedals, and I honestly tend to agree that it's probably about 90% of the way there. But as a working musician, it's been hugely beneficial to me to get 90% of the sound that I'm looking for, and then with a little bit of tweaking, I've always found that it's perfectly usable. And this has been really wonderful for when I play pop gigs or other things where I might need particular things that have to do with certain sounds or certain songs, whether it's covers. It lets me dial in things without having to buy expensive boxes and shuffle around my pedal board. So that's the main reason I got this. But it has become an indispensable part of my rig for these following two reasons. The next best thing about this is its recording capabilities. It has a ton of amp models in it, and as someone who mainly plays jazz guitar himself, usually I just need a really nice clean sound, and I use my Mambo for that. But sometimes I'm recording or I'm doing something with students where I need some distortion, some angry sounds, or a lot of the time I'm teaching metal students and I have to tune down, so I use the pitch shift function in this quite a bit. But in terms of recording applications, the fact that you have all of these amps totally modeled, you do obviously, there's a learning curve to getting amp-like sounds out of a modeler because it's not a real amp, but you can get all of the great sounds that you would normally associate with a real amp. And it's been super useful recording because it's just this little thing. Rather than having to fiddle with mics and amp settings and get up and move, do whatever, I can edit it all on this little interface. And I've been so happy with the results. It's made things really, really easy. And then if I'm recording in a live off the floor situation, I just take one of the stereo feeds from this. So I have a mic on my amp or on the speaker cabinet that I'm using. And I also have the direct out. So I have a completely dry guitar signal where there's no bleed from anything else. And that's been really wonderful in recording situations. Now, the third reason that I didn't think I would use as much as I have, but the third reason that I love it is I can use this instead of an amp at 90% of the gigs that I play, and it makes life really easy just walking around town with a guitar case and this in the front pouch, because schlepping gear is my least favorite part of being a musician. I will happily admit to that. So just having everything that you need in here, as long as the venue has a PA or even just a lone wedge monitor that I can run it through, I get to just bring this. And this has been super useful in that my trio and I just did a Canadian tour where we played all across the country, and I always knew that I had my sound. I just brought this. I didn't have to deal with backlining amps. I just plugged it into either straight into the PA if there was a sound guy. If not, I would steal a wedge and just run it behind me as if it was an amp. And it has saved so much time and worry out of my life to know that I just bring this. Every venue I would make subtle EQ tweaks to my tones because every room's different. Some of them are woofy, some of them are kind of nasally. But this has been a real lifesaver in that regard because I've been able to just plug in, not worry about it, and I have basically the same sound anywhere I go. So this has been my mainstay on probably 80% of the gigs. I don't even bring my amp anymore, which is so awesome. And it's also reliable. It's in a pocket. The settings don't get bumped on the transit over because it's all just saved as presets. And it's really been a wonderful device in that regard. So as I was saying, this $800 purchase, I did buy it secondhand. They're going a little bit more expensive now. But this is the best purchase I've ever made in terms of gear and in terms of how much I use it. I initially bought it for one purpose, but it's seeped its way into almost everything that I do. Despite these glowing reviews, there are a couple of drawbacks that come particularly with this HX Stomp unit. I do not think at all that these are insurmountable obstacles, but they are things that I will tell you if you're considering making the purchase yourself. The first is you only get 3 switches to deal with. So you can run a million effects like the pop cover band that I play in. Let me find it. I have a pretty... there we go, you can almost see. I have basically every block that's available to me in use. And the thing about this that can be tricky is how to navigate all those effects on just 3 buttons. You can program it so that multiple pedals can be turned on and off with one switch. Like for example, I call it my Neo Soul sound, but this switch flicks on 3 effects and switches them off, so they are all kind of tied into each other. And then my distortion, and I have an auto filter on there as well. Those just control one effect, so that's one way you can mitigate it, is if you have effects that will be turned on together, you can of course lump them together, which is awesome, because back when I had a pedal board, if I wanted to turn on 2 things, I'd have to do a death-defying 2-foot stomp. And, I always try to mitigate as much as possible in live situations. I want as little as possible to go wrong and leave as little room for error as possible. So that is kind of a plus, but again, you only have these 3 switches. The other thing that we can run into is problems with DSP. DSP is kind of like RAM on your computer. So certain effects and certain amps will take up different amounts of DSP. So you may run into things that you can't all run in one spot, which for me actually happens on the ones that I use the most, my jazz settings. So I have to have one setup that has the freeze pedal, because that's a very DSP heavy effect. And then I have another patch that has all of the tones that I would normally use, all of my effects. So I can't use the freeze and use all of my effects at the same time, but I have found that I usually don't need to have both of them happening at the same time, so it's never an issue. I just have to remember to flip between the 2 presets when I need each effect. However, that is something to consider when you go for whether you're going for this or whether you're going for the Helix LT, which is like the full pedal board, or even the Helix Floor. those are my only two real complaints. And again, the fact that this is such a small form factor, I can throw it in a guitar case, I can take it on a plane. I really appreciate that about this, and it's just a great all-in-one box. So I'm happy to deal with, having to switch between maybe 2 or 3 presets on a gig rather than having them all in one big preset where I have absolutely everything that I need. But just to recover all of those points of why I love this, it's replaced all of my pedals. I never have to worry about buying an expensive effect again for a particular sound or a particular gig. They keep updating it and adding more, and I've never had bad experiences with the effects that are in there. So no pedals, no pedal board. That's awesome for me. It's all housed in this one little container. 2, recording is awesome because you have access to like 40 different amps at any time, a ton of effects. You can dial everything in on the interface rather than having to get up and move stuff. And then 3, it makes my life as a gigging and touring musician so easy because I just carry my sound with me in my guitar case, and I can take it on the bus, take it on planes, take it wherever, and I will have my sound. Again, usually have to make a couple tweaks, but yeah, that's my love affair with the Line 6 HX Stomp. Let me know if you guys have one, or if you're thinking about one, or what you guys use instead. This over like the Quad Cortex, the Axe Effects stuff, this is the best form factor for me personally. I totally understand that other people like to have the expression pedals and everything, but this is just my tale of the best $800 I've ever spent on gear. In the comments, I'd love to hear what you think your best gear purchase of all time has ever been. There's certainly things that I would maybe rather have than this, but if I'm being honest with myself, this is the most useful thing that I have ever spent money on for music, I think. It's really, really changed my process and helps relieve me of a lot of headaches. So I guess that's kind of my whole video. I hope you guys have an awesome day. Thank you for making it to this point in the video. If you'd like, please subscribe. I put a new video up every Monday. And then if you like, you can check out my website for some lesson diagrams, or if you want to take a lesson with me, I'd love to meet you, love to work with you. But until I see you next time, please have an awesome day and have some fun playing guitar.